Going on, everybody? I hope you're all having a fantastic day. So today I'm going to be ranking the top 10 champions to Awaken in Marvel Contest of Champions. And I know I start a lot of my videos just by going over a brief synopsis and then just going into the rankings, but I'm actually just going to start right away with the rankings, and number 10 is on the screen right now. It's Archangel. So I'm basing this list off of how much the champion improves with their Awakened ability, how much of a benefit they see, and how good they are with it. So for example, Wolverine really benefits from his Awakened ability, but at the end of the day, he isn't a top, amazing champion with it unless you have Apocalypse. So he wouldn't be seeing this list, even though he absolutely requires the Awakening. Same thing goes for, Scarlet Witch Classic. So yeah, even if they really benefit from it, they just might not be as good as the champions on this list. So first I have Archangel. Now, Archangel, without his Awakened ability, is still a beast in any bleed and poison immune, or no, not immune, in any matchups where you can bleed and poison the opponent. He just absolutely melts them down. But when he gets Awakened, he gets the ability accuracy reduction with his neurotoxins, and that just brings him to a completely different level of gameplay. So you can see against this, Juggernaut, he isn't activated unstoppable once, maybe aside from the first special attack, but the neurotoxins just been shutting it down the entire fight. So he really is just a beast for all these kinds of nodes. Footloose he can counter, just so many things. He's also pretty good for diss track, but you just gotta make sure to manage your bleeds. But yeah, Archangel just is such a beast, and he gains so much from that Awakened ability, and he just becomes so much better with it. So yeah, he is a solidified number 10 spot for me. And so at number 9 is another mutant, and that is Namor. So I had a really hard time deciding between Namor and Archangel as to which one I was going to include on the list, because absolutely neither Awakened ability to be good for standard matchups. They need it for the more complex matchups. But I decided to put Namor above Archangel just because of how much his Awakened ability can do. So whereas Archangel can counter a lot of nodes that can be annoying with ability accuracy reduction, Namor gives all damage back onto a champion that he's supposed to take. So let's say, for example, no, I don't know what I'm thinking of, but it will come to me. So quickly, it's like Korgs, Electros, all that damage you take and you put it back onto the opponent. And then there's another node, I don't know what it's called for some reason, but it's when you get the physical resistances on the opponent, and every time you land a crit, you take damage back onto yourself. You will reflect that damage onto whatever your opponent is instead with Namor. That's how valuable his Awakened ability is. He's just so beastly with it. And the damage stays the same even when you don't have it. But the damage that you get from that reflection is just so much, and it gives him so much more utility. So it barely edges out Archangel in my opinion, but they could very easily be switched around. So I have Namor at number 9. And so at number 8, we have Angela. So Angela gets her Awakened ability, and what it does for her is she can become completely immune to all debuffs if you have 3 buffs on her. But fair warning for her and Namor, they need to be Sig 200 to get this. So in order to reflect all the damage on Namor, and for order to her to go fully immune to the debuffs with only 3 buffs, you do need them Awakened Sig 200. But I feel like Angela's has such use because there's so many nodes like Caltrops, Caustic Temper, all these nodes where you can get poisons, bleeds, energy adoption lanes. She just won't be taking any of the damage because all of her buffs will be up, and thus she's not going to have to worry about it. And she also has the ability where she can counter auto-block champions. So people like Thor Ragnarok on intercepts, you will be fine. You can do your intercepts right away. Annoying ones like Heimdall, you can bypass that. And of course, MODOK. So yeah, she just has really, really nice utility off the Awakened ability, and I think it's enough to lift her up to the spot. So she is sitting at number 8. Alright, now at number 7 is Void, and we're starting to get into that range where these champions really can't be used at all without their Awakened abilities. So spots like 10 to 8 are all usable champions, they just gain so much utility, but Void here just gets absolutely everything from his Awakened ability. It increases the potency of your debuffs. It increases the rate at which you put the debuffs on the opponent. It increases the damage that you have in Fear of the Void. It gives you Fear of the Void. Without the Awakening, you do not have Fear of the Void. So all your 6 debuffs, once they're on, they will just fall off. You won't get the Fear of the Void debuff, and you'll be back to doing the same damage you always were throughout the entire fight. But with Fear of the Void, you get such a boost to your damage. You get so much utility with the more damage and then the longer lasting debuffs and the rate that they're applied onto your opponent. He becomes so much better. Like, I took this Void up to rank 3 as my first rank 3 6-star, but I made sure to open every last crystal before popping my Awakening gem into him, because I know that not only is his Awakening essential, but that Sig 200 is. So mine's only at Sig 90, but I really do want to get him up all the way eventually, because he just benefits so highly from it. So Void is at number 7. Okay, so now at the number 6 spot is Corvus Glaive. And Corvus is more similar to the 10 through 8 spots, where he doesn't need it to have all this insane damage, but you become unkillable with this and with this Awaken ability. You can't die if you have one Glaive charge and you have a million debuffs on you doing 18,000 damage. It won't matter. As long as you have one Glaive charge and you don't get hit, you will be absolutely fine. You won't be able to die. So I'm going to showcase it in this AQ fight right here. I have an Everlasting Poison on me, and I'm going to show you once I get to 1%, it just can't kill me. And this is just so potent, I can't even explain it. Because if you're doing this with like Angela and you were at a low percentage, you'd be kind of screwed because you don't know if you can get 3 buffs in time. But with Corvus, you just immediately have it at the start and end of every fight as long as you have the Glaive charges. You can always hit into block because his block damage does so much, so you can just keep that one Glaive charge up. And yeah, it's just absolutely insane. I have beaten incursion bosses at, what is it, zone like Sector 8, zone like 9, and then I would just have Corvus. My friend would be knocked out, so I'd have the node where you just degen all your health, but I'd be fine because Corvus doesn't take the degen damage at 1%, and I've been able to solo those bosses solely because of this Awakened ability. So I value it super highly. I know a lot of people don't do it as much as I do, but I just can't deny how helpful it's been for me in my account. So I have Corvus at number 6. Okay, so getting into our top 5 is Captain America Infinity War. Now, he absolutely requires the Awakening and absolutely requires Sig 200 to be the most insane that he can be, because this is not an ideal matchup for him in terms of he doesn't place all the debuffs on the opponent, but it is ideal in terms that you can place whatever you can on him with 100%. So he has the Petrifies on him. It doesn't really help against Juggernaut, but you can see right here, I'm about to hit into his Unstoppable. Doesn't matter, I finish it off. So his Awakened ability puts, I think, armor breaks, weaknesses, and the Petrifies on your opponent. So if you have all of those against like heal reversals, they're absolutely done. Even in normal matchups, because the armor break stacks so heavily and your damage just goes through the roof, he gains all of his utility through that Awakened ability. It's like Void in a sense that you gain so much more damage because the armor breaks are like equivalent to Fear of the Void, and it's just amazing because at least with Void you can heal reverse. Even if you're not Awakened, it won't be nearly as potent. You can just block it out, but if you have Despair, it can be a little bit of reversing. But with Captain America Infinity, you just have everything off that Awakened ability. So that's why I value it so highly, and after he becomes Awakened, I do think he has a higher cap of damage and more use than Void does. So he comes in at number 5. So at number 4, we have another controversial spot potentially, and I have Ghost. So Ghost, compared to with her Awakened ability without, is just night and day. In terms of damage, it's not really anything at all to be special about, but you may think that as in the numbers, but it actually gives her such a higher damage per second because you're able to get up to the special 2s, which is Ghost's main source of damage, so much quicker. Because when you phase, you get power for every hit you phase. Whereas if you're just playing normally, you maybe phase a hit and then do 5-hit combos into your opponent, phase hit, and repeat. With the Awakened ability, you can phase like 3 hits and then just go absolutely crazy with your power meter. It's like having a power booster on without even using one. That's what it feels like when you're using Ghost with her Awakened ability. And there's the difference between with and without it. It's absolutely absurd. It's just such a powerful ability, and it makes her so much faster to play, so much more fun to play because you feel like you're actually doing more damage more quickly. And yeah, Ghost's Awakened ability just absolutely sends it through the roof for me. And I know some people don't value it as highly as I do, but for me, it's just absolutely essential to the character. So her Awakened ability and her character just easily slots into the number 4 spot for me. Alright, so at the number 3 spot, we have Omega Red. So Omega Red needs Awakening, Sig 200, Suicides, and Synergies to be the most OP version of himself. but it's so worth it. I have my Omega Awakened and at Sig 150, and he already is so much more powerful than when he was, let alone at like Sig 60, but just when he was unawakened, it is night and day. Because the death spore damage goes up so highly, it's absolutely absurd, and you get the chance to go unblockable with your tentacle hits, and that just all increases so heavily once you get the Sig 200 higher, but you don't have any of it without your Awakened ability. So if you run Suicides, he could probably move up on this list to number 1 or 2, but he's just absolutely absurd with his Awakened ability. It makes him so much more fast, so much more reliable, and just so much more versatile. So for me, the jump in things that Omega can do with versus without his Awakened ability is easily enough to justify his spot at number 3. So that's where he lands for now. But a Suicide user could easily place him higher. Okay, so spots 1 and 2 you probably could have predicted from the start, but at number 2, I slotted in Aegon. So Aegon, without his Awakened ability, is very similar to Star-Lord in the fact that each matchup you have to ramp up, but the ramp up isn't as fast and you don't get as much damage out of it as you do with Star-Lord. But when Aegon is awakened, he just goes insane. This isn't even a fully ramped up Aegon. He can just go crazy with it. He can go unblockable, gain Furies, gain Unstoppables, True Accuracy, combo, like shield. He does everything. The bleeds are so big. If you get hit, you get 6 personal Furies on you that just absolutely nuke the opponent. They can hit for like 30k off like a Suicide rank 5 champion and 6-star, just even more. So Aegon, the jump that you see in terms of damage and just overall use and utility with his Awakened ability is unreal. And he was so hard not to put in the first spot because you very easily could, because without it, he's just not, like, he's not even half the champion he is with it. So Aegon easily comes into this list at number 2, and he probably could be at number 1 for some people. But there's just one champion I slightly edge out above him. And that champ is Nick Fury, who takes our number 1 spot. Nick Fury without an Awakened ability has subpar damage, still pretty good bleed damage, okay evade counter if you're able to throw special ones very frequently. You can get internal bleeds, but they won't do a lot of damage because your tactical charges are going to fall off. So without his Awakened ability, he is low demigod tier at the best. With his Awakened ability, he becomes by far the best champion in the skill class. You get the tactical charges locked on every time you throw a special one. You get 8 of them, so it takes 2 special ones to go fully unblockable for the rest of the fight. The Fury buff that you get gives him so much more damage. It's unreal. Your 3k light attacks turn into about 6 to 7k, so it's over 100% more damage. Your internal bleeds will actually last long, and the bleeds you place on while they're there will do more damage, and they will also last longer. So whereas if you had 2 tactical charges in your first life, they were doing not as much damage, and also they were falling off pretty quickly. When you enter his second phase, he literally feels like he never loses those bleeds, and that they're always taken for 3k. And might we not also forget his stun immunity? That is one of the most overlooked and just most important pieces of utility that any champion has ever had. He can avoid so many nodes with it: encroaching stun, Black Panther's stun reflection, so many things that Nick Fury can do with his Awakened ability. And you can just see all the things I'm doing here right now in this phase are absolutely impossible without his Awakened ability. The only downside is that you don't have higher health when you enter it, but it's just absurd. Like, you can see it right now, my bleeds are ticking for 3.6k, and then I have all the internal bleeds going to make it longer, and it's just absolutely absurd. So Nick Fury just easily comes in at number 1 for me. Edges out Aegon. It was very hard between them because Aegon really is kind of useless without it, but so is Fury, and I think Fury has a bigger cap. So that is going to do it for this ranking. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave below how you would rank these Awakened champions below, and I will see you in the next one.